It's been about a month since I quit my big, shiny tech job and said goodbye to the corporate life. And I want to be honest with you about something. I thought that moment would feel like this big sense of relief, and maybe I'll even do a little dance in my living room afterwards. But instead, I had this disorienting feeling that I don't quite have a word for. The more I sat with it, the more I realized that this is something deeper than that. And even beyond a personality quirk of someone who just takes time to accept change. This is Dirty Brown. I'm your host, Kriti J, with a jhadu in hand, ready to stir things up. On this show, we talk a lot about the cost of choosing yourself. I have been asking women that for months now. Today, I'm turning that question on myself. If you're a brown woman who has ever made an off script choice, I think this will land for you. We are given permission to blow up our lives for certain things, for marriage, for kids, maybe for another respectable career, but just to feel alive? No, nobody gives us a framework for that. And I did just that. Today, I want to talk about what that actually costs, the three things it unexpectedly gave me, and why I'm still 1 month in introducing myself as an unemployed product manager and not a content creator, podcast producer, or someone who's trying to change the conversation. I also have an announcement for you, so make sure to watch it till the end. Let's get into it. It's not uncommon to hear stories of people quitting after decades of slogging, especially when they're 35 or 40 years old. The catalyst is usually burnout, and that also had a part to play in my decision. But to understand why I quit, we have to go a little further than the burnout. I have known for about 8 years now that something was off. Yeah, that's right, 8 years. More than half of my career, I felt unfulfilled. That will eventually take a toll on anyone. And then a few years ago, I went through something difficult in my personal life. I won't get into the details of that, but it was one of those things where your cup is half empty and you're just trying to get through the day. Looking back, I really should have taken a sabbatical. But at that time, I didn't think I needed it. I told myself work would keep me distracted. But what I was actually doing was gaslighting my pain and the grief that I was going through. I kept going, kept performing, kept showing up to meetings and building products with a cup that was running on empty. And that's when the burnout really started to set in. Not as a dramatic breakdown, just as the slow creeping exhaustion that never fully went away. And on the other hand, there was this idea that wouldn't leave me alone. Dirty Brown. I think I thought about it every night before going to bed. Not as a hobby, not as a side project, but as something my entire being needed to move toward. But because I didn't know where to start or how to even do this, I stayed with the stable option. Another thing that kept me there was the financial fear. I didn't have a partner for support, and I didn't want to rely on my parents for the financial help. So I took a step back, started crunching some numbers, and once I was assured that I have the savings that gave me the financial runway, I sent that 2 weeks notice to my manager. I'm not going to lie, I was scared. In the days leading up to my last day, I was having a bunch of conversations with my colleagues to say goodbye. Half of my colleagues said, I wish I was in your position to just take a break and do something I love. The other half said, you are so brave. That second statement, while a compliment, it definitely triggered all the fears that I was trying to push past and not think about. What I heard every time someone said it was, this is risky, I wouldn't do it. And the more people said it, the more scared I became, not less. I started thinking, wait, is it actually brave? Because brave and stupid are pretty close sometimes. Am I being brave or am I being stupid? I went into those last weeks with that question sitting in my stomach. And then it was my last day and the silence arrived. When you work in a high performance role, your worth is measurable every single day. metrics, OKRs, performance reviews, compensation, there is always something telling you where you stand. I didn't realize how much I depended on it until it was gone. Now I have a publishing schedule and view counts. Every time an episode doesn't perform the way I expected, something in me contracts. And at first I thought it was my ego getting hurt. But when I really dug into it, I realized it's that question I think a lot of us carry. Am I good enough? Am I excellent at this? Corporate answered that question daily, even though I hated that question. Dirty Brown doesn't, not yet, anyway. And then there's the age. I am 37 years old. There's something specific about being a beginner at 37. Not because you're too old, but because you have certain expectations of what your life would be like at this stage. I had a picture in my head that I would be established, confident, know what I'm doing, but instead, I'm here learning a whole new world of content production, making beginner mistakes publicly with an audience watching. But here's the thing that really gets me underneath all of this. Underneath the missing metrics, the am I good enough, or the beginner mistakes at 37, all of this went back to the same one thing. And it took me a while to name it. And I think it also explains why it took me 8 years to do something about how I was feeling, and why You Are So Brave made me feel even more scared and not less. The good girl script. And I don't mean the external version of that script. The dinner conversations, the raised eyebrows, uncle and aunties asking you questions. I mean the version you have internalized so deeply that it sounds like your own voice. I had done every responsible thing, crunched the numbers, made sure I had savings, and yet I found myself asking the question, am I being immature to even want this? Do I even deserve to want this? I sat with that question for a long time because it didn't feel like a fear about money or timing or practicality. It felt like something else, something more familiar, like a voice I had been hearing my whole life. And I know that's not just me. That's something we absorb from childhood, watching our mothers and aunts just give and never once put themselves first. That conditioning doesn't give us the permission for rest, for self care, or the freedom to want something different for ourselves. We internalize the idea that sacrificing is what makes a woman worthy. So when I chose to do something that was the opposite, it didn't just feel hard, it felt absurd, childish, immature. Brown women are given permission to blow up their lives for kids, for marriage, for elders, for another respectable job, but never because your soul needed it. So I'm writing that script in real time with no framework, which is why maybe even 1 month later, I'm introducing myself as an unemployed product manager and not someone who is trying to change the conversation or a content creator or a podcaster. There is also an unexpected side to all of this. Also, this episode is not about regret. I want to start with my parents. When I told them that I was planning to quit, I got the usual questions that you'd expect. Why? What are you going to do next? Why would you then stay or continue staying in Canada? If you quit, you should come back to India. Or is this truly the right time to quit? The right time? Well, they're called golden handcuffs for a reason. There's always a reason to wait. A better bonus cycle, a more stable market, better timing, a less uncertain moment. If I had waited for the right time, I'd still be waiting. I understand where my parents were coming from. It was love and care filtered through a framework that they knew, which is to not leave a stable job and to not leave a good paying job and not staying away from family if you have no external obligations. But when I opened up to them about how I had been feeling for most of my career, and what I wanted to do. They understood and they stopped pushing back. I had prepared for resistance and instead I got warmth. They are even some of the biggest cheerleaders of the podcast. And I really needed that support, especially amongst all the other uncertainty I was dealing with. The second gift is the creative freedom. I know I had been craving that. When you are in corporate, even the most interesting idea has guardrails, politics, stakeholders, timelines, approvals. Here, if something pulls at me, I just go for it. This episode is an example of that, where I let go of my usual guest episode to pursue this episode instead. And then there is the third gift, the one I'm still learning to receive. And that's the honest discomfort. What I mean by that is the anxiety I feel, checking the download numbers, wondering if I am good enough at this, sitting with uncertainty. It's the same anxiety I felt in corporate too, but this is mine. It's in service of something I chose. There's a difference between performing for a system that doesn't see you and struggling toward something that matters to you. Both are hard, only one of them makes you feel more alive. So, where does that leave me? 1 month in, no KPIs, no performance reviews telling me where I stand. Just a mic, a camera, a publishing schedule, and that disoriented feeling that I still don't have a word for. I blew up a life that looked good on paper. Not for marriage, not for family, not for anything that the script would have said was a valid reason, but simply to feed my soul. Something in me was dying and it needed saving, and that was worth it. As for the good girl script, I'm still unlearning that. That voice, the one that asks, do I even deserve to want this? It doesn't go quiet just because you took the leap. It's why I'm probably still introducing myself as an unemployed product manager 1 month in. Unlearning the script is a practice, and I think that's what I'm actually doing here, one episode at a time. And I want to say something to you if you are sitting with your own version of this. If you have made the leap or you're standing at the edge of it thinking if whether this disoriented feeling means that you took the wrong step. It doesn't. We talk a lot about the courage it takes to make the jump. We don't talk enough about what it actually feels once you're in the air. The absence of a script is uncomfortable. The silence where certainty used to be is uncomfortable. Building a new identity from scratch at an age where you expected to have arrived somewhere, that is uncomfortable. But uncomfortable is not the same as wrong. Before I wrap up today, I have an announcement. After this episode, I will be taking a break from publishing new episodes. I will still be active on the channel, posting clips so that you can catch up on the previous episodes, but new guest interviews and cultural critique episodes will be on pause. This is me practicing what this whole episode has been about today. Listening to the rest my body is asking for and letting myself just exhale. I also want to take a moment to celebrate. There is a lot to celebrate. The corporate life I quit, how far this podcast has come from that episode that I published more than a year ago. I'm genuinely proud of the conversations we've had on this show, and I know they have landed for a lot of you. That deserves a moment. Thank you for being here and being part of this community. The fact that you're here, the fact that you have stuck around, and the fact that these conversations are finding the people they needed to find, that means everything to me. I will be back after the summer break, and I already have an exciting set of guests planned for you, and you're going to want to hear their stories. Stay subscribed, catch up on those previous episodes, share this show with your friends, and make sure to subscribe on socials. If there's a guest that you want on the podcast, or if you want to be on the podcast, definitely reach out. Until next time, goodbye.